Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this super important conversation today on the deadly issue of ghost guns. So what are ghost guns and why are they so dangerous? Well, these guns are manufactured without a serial number. And the sale of these weapons, they're not registered anywhere. So they can be assembled at home from mail order kits or printed at home on a 3D printer, which is terrifying, with no background check and no record of the sale of a specific weapon to a specific person. And it's all perfectly legal. Imagine that a man was convicted of a felony relating to domestic abuse. After he gets out of prison as a felon, he's never allowed to buy a gun again legally. He is now what we call prohibited possessor. So if he went to his local gun shop, if they do their job and conduct a legally required background check, they won't sell him the gun, right? So instead, he goes home, opens up his browser, and orders a receiver kit online. With simple tools, anyone can buy one at home. In just a few days, he will have his own untraceable AR-15, or maybe he's got a 3D printer, and in a few hours, he's got an undetectable, unregistered plastic gun capable of firing several shots. And with the gun he built or printed for just a few $100s, he can shoot and kill the woman he was convicted of victimizing. Now, we don't have to imagine this happening because we know that it already is happening. In November of last year at Saugus High School in Santa Clarita, California, a 16-year-old boy shot 5 people, killing 2, including a 16-year-old girl whose father you will hear from in just a few minutes. That boy could not have legally purchased the .45 caliber handgun he used in this shooting, but it was assembled from parts it was legal to purchase. In 2013 in Santa Monica, a man who failed a background check used a ghost AR-15 to kill 5 people. In 2017, a man with a ghost AR-15 killed 5 people and injured 18 more in Tehama County, California. And not only do these weapons end up in the hands of individuals looking to actually kill people, they end up in the hands of organized crime and very likely terror groups. A neo-Nazi in New York was arrested trying to buy one on the street. And we have no idea how many more are out there, who has them, and what they are planning to do with them. This is not what the framers intended. But sounds devastating, but it's not all bad news. Attorneys general across the United States are suing the federal government to do more about this problem. Legislators like my friend Senator Blumenthal are sponsoring legislation to address this problem, and activists like those on this panel today are fighting every day to keep another unnecessary shooting from happening. So thank you so much for being here. And I'm so very excited to be here with this incredible panel tonight. We will start this evening's discussion with Poe Murray, chairperson of the Newtown Action Alliance and the Newtown Foundation, the nonprofit a nonprofit activist organization hosting this event tonight. Poe, thank you so much for being here with us. And you've worked so hard on federal legislation aimed at making it illegal to buy or possess ghost guns in the United States, harder for American ghost guns to find their way to other nations. Can you tell us a little bit about the status of that and why this is so important?
Oh, you're still muted, sorry.
You're muted.
I always do that. First, Alyssa, I want to thank you for moderating this discussion tonight. And it's been a real honor working with you to tackle the issue of gun violence in America. And, you know, we will continue to work with you. And I appreciate you being on our board of advisors. That's been so helpful. I also want to say a few words to Sandy and Lonnie Phillips if they have joined the webinar tonight. Today is the 8-year, what she calls a traversity, a tragedy where a gunman using a weapon of war or many weapons of war killed their daughter, Jessie, and 11 others, and also injured 70 others in the Aurora movie theater. So our hearts are with them today. And while the Aurora shooter bought his gun legally, other mass shooters, like you said, Alyssa, can make their own assault weapons right in their home using the ghost gun parts. So I want to share with you my screen so that I can share some information about ghost guns. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. So you explained very well that ghost guns are do-it-yourself untraceable guns that are created from unfinished receivers without serial numbers. And ghost guns are exempted from federal regulation, and 3D guns are ghost guns. I also wanted to explain that 3D guns are do-it-yourself firearms made on demand from CAD files and 3D printers. And the 3D gun printing technology allows any person anywhere to make these untraceable guns. And most of the 3D guns are made entirely from plastic, rendering them virtually undetectable by modern security technology, but other ones are made from metal. 3D guns are untraceable, mostly undetectable, and very accessible and very dangerous. Sadly, though, the ATF does not consider the 80% or unfinished receivers as firearms, and therefore it makes it extremely dangerous. 80% receivers and 3D receivers can be made on a 3D printer, as stated before, or they can be purchased. And they can be purchased on many different platforms. There are many online retailers like 80% Arms, and also Ghost Guns, and there's another one called 80% Lowers. So anyone could purchase these ghost guns and ghost gun machines. Machines can be bought for about $2,100, and people can make their own AR-15s in their basement. Many items on these sites are currently out of stock during the pandemic. There's been a real surge in the ghost gun parts. So why is it important to ban these ghost guns? Well, because it's becoming a weapon of choice for criminals and gang members, domestic abusers, domestic and foreign extremist groups, firearms traffickers, and mass shooters. Over the years, ghost guns are being recovered in more crime scenes throughout the country, and allowing those who are prohibited from owning guns, including terrorists, are making their own guns by skirting laws on a state, local, and federal levels. And it's a dangerous situation for ordinary citizens in America, and it could lead to a national security catastrophe. Thankfully, we have Senator Blumenthal and many other legislators who are taking this issue very seriously. But only 5 states have banned ghost guns: California, New Jersey, Washington, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. And currently other states like New York, Pennsylvania, and Maryland are looking to ban ghost guns as well. Senator Blumenthal has recently reintroduced his Untraceable Firearms Act of 2020, but other senators like Senators Markey and Menendez have also introduced laws to ban 3D printed guns and stopping these 3D guns and ghost guns from being proliferated overseas. So that's really important. And in the House of Representatives, numerous bills have been introduced. Many mirror the laws that have been introduced on the Senate side. So we are very grateful to all those representatives and members of Congress. The most important reason why we need to ban weapons that can be made from home is that it is being used in crimes. And recently, I was able to have a conversation with Bryan Muehlberger. He lost his daughter in the Saugus High School shooting in November of 2019. It's very tragic, but I think it will show you why it's critical for us to take action. So let me play that video for you.
Bryan, thank you so much for participating in the National Ghost Guns Forum. Ghost guns are becoming a weapon of choice for criminals, often manufactured by gangs and used in mass shootings. It's alarming that ghost guns are selling out during the pandemic. Could you share how you were personally impacted by ghost guns?
Yeah, hi, Po. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so on November 14, 2019, just about little over 8 months ago, my daughter Gracie Ann Muehlberger, well, we always called our sweet pea, was tragically killed in a mass shooting at her high school, Saugus High School in Santa Clarita, California. We had previous, lockdowns. Of course, active shooter drills have always been occurring, but never something of this magnitude. And on November 14, 2019, a shooter came onto campus. He had actually been on campus for quite some time that morning and opened fire in the quad, kind of an area of a courtyard in the middle of school that killed my daughter. He basically brandished a 1911 .45 caliber ghost gun, shooting 2 children and killing them and 3 others before killing himself. He pulled the gun out of his backpack that he had carried on campus. He opened fire with this ghost gun. He was about 2 to 3 feet from my daughter. My daughter was facing the other direction, and he opened fire straight at her, right into her back. She was the first one shot, went straight through her back, barely missing her spine by about 2 millimeters, angled through the left of the chest, went through her backpack, through her back, through her chest, through her lung, out her left breast, pretty much killing her instantly. Sadly, I've had to do research on understanding what she probably went through, and she probably suffered for about 60 seconds drowning in her own blood. The gun jammed. He cleared it really rapidly, so he had experience with weapons of this sort. Continued firing, also killing Dominic Blackwell, a 14-year-old freshman as well, and injuring 3 others, including my daughter's best friend, who was shot twice and survived. Another girl by the name of Mia, who was shot once in the abdomen, and another boy named Andrew, who was shot once before pulling the trigger on his own head. Excuse me. And and then, it all transpired so rapidly. It was estimated to be around 8 to 10 seconds. And at that point, our life was forever changed by ghost guns. She was you know, as far as research can indicate, the first child ever killed by a ghost gun in a mass shooting at a high school.
Bryan, I have no words. You know, we hear these stories too often, and no parent should outlive their children due to gun violence in America. And I'm just so very sorry for your loss. What was Gracie like?
Yeah, that's the hardest part is, she was a vivacious, just funny, loving, caring little girl. She was barely over 15. She had turned 15 on October 10th. She was only 14 weeks into high school, had a lot of goals with high school, with the first one being to have fun and a great time. She was my little jokester. We were always doing things to make each other laugh. She was just all about fun and living life to its fullest. It was rare not to see her, you know, smiling or laughing. You know, everyone, including us, always talk about how big her smile was and how boisterous and powerful her laugh was. You could hear her a mile away, and everyone just always said how much they really missed that laugh, as much as we do. She loved being loud and being heard. She just lit up a room. She was always just a ball full of energy. We never really saw her down ever. She was just kind of a spitfire, you know, really didn't take anything from anybody, but wasn't also the type of person that was a bully either. She was always very inclusive of others, also welcoming people into her life that maybe had a need. We remember an incident one time where she invited a girl who had been cutting herself, that she knew from her middle school, over to her youth group at our church, just trying to make her realize that there's, you know, people out there who care. And that was just the type of girl Gracie was, you know, just this fun-loving, vivacious, caring little girl.
Well, thank you for sharing that about your Gracie. That helps us understand, you know, what you've lost, what your family has lost. So we work with many families who have been directly impacted by gun violence, and they have transformed their tragedy into attempting to create change, you know, for a positive outcome. What have you been doing to honor with action, honor Gracie with action, and what are your future plans?
So, you know, over the last number of months, you know, I've spoken out publicly about ghost guns. I was on 60 Minutes in May. I think it was Mother's Day, actually, on ghost guns and a story they had done. So I really feel like a personal passion on this topic, and just the way that ATF classifies these firearms as not firearms is just disheartening, because it's a very ambiguous ruling. It's a very subjective set of parameters that they define these guns by. If you were to go out there and show a picture of a ghost gun kit next to a real completed handgun, a serialized handgun, the average person would not know the difference. And I would say even those that are probably not average and really know weapons would probably not know the difference. That's how close these guns are to being completed firearms. It's really a matter of they come with a mold. They are able to be manufactured in about 45 minutes from the kit you get. They give you all the tools you need. All you need is a power drill. You don't need anything more complex than that. And to be able to watch a YouTube video and follow directions. Drill a couple holes, mill out a section, snap it together, load it with ammo. You've got yourself a firearm. So I have a big passion for that. So that's me personally on that topic. That's not necessarily where we're going with her future foundation and so forth. We're actually, we've started the Gracie Strong Fund that will eventually fund her Gracie Strong Foundation. And that's really to do initiatives around helping youth have a powerful voice as it relates to a number of things. One is we want to find a way that allows them to speak up and be heard when they're hurting, or if they know somebody's hurting, We also want to give them a platform. You could kind of picture TEDx meets Masterclass meets change.org, to where we can help them craft their message to tell the story of their passion, to start a movement. We've kind of got this marketing thing that we haven't really launched. I don't know if you can kind of see it on my shirt a little bit here. Speak TF Up. When we were kind of going through Gracie's phone after the tragedy, we kept on seeing in lots of text messages the letters TF. And we thought, what does TF mean? We kind of had a thought what it might mean. We always use the term WTF, as you probably know what that means. This is an acronym for that acronym. So our youth are even shortening acronyms now. So she would always say TF, which meant the F. And so we also noticed with this tragedy that there were so many opportunities to prevent it from occurring. The murderer, Nathan Burho, was a hurting child, but nobody knew it except his family, his mother. She didn't speak up. His friends noticed he was acting a little bit more disconnected in recent weeks. Nobody spoke up. His teachers noticed his grades starting to slip slightly, that his attendance had lapsed a little bit here and there, and nobody spoke up. That morning he was acting very, very strange, and nobody spoke up. There were so many opportunities. The father had a number of weapons in the household that were confiscated 4 years prior to this, and then he probably got into ghost guns, which is what we assume is how possibly the murderer got the weapons. And he had mental issues, and so nobody spoke up for his behalf. The gun safety side of it, the storage of these weapons was something to be had, and nobody spoke up. So there's just this opportunity. We feel that, if people have the ability to speak, to say their piece, they're not afraid to, they're not shunned upon for speaking up, whether it be about mental health or their own personal depression, or that somebody's doing something wrong or acting in a different way. Or even beyond that, when you think of Black Lives Matter and these type of movements, I think the youth are our future. And I think we need to help them have a powerful voice and be heard. And that's really where we're leaning with her foundation, because she was the type that if she didn't like something, she would tell you. If she saw somebody being picked on, she'd go step in between them. And she wasn't a big girl. She was an average, petite teen. And she still, just didn't really think about the ramifications of that. She just said what was on her mind. And so we felt that this kind of embellishes who she is. And I think that's where we're leaning towards with the movement.
I love it. I agree with you that youth and young people are the future of this movement, and we need their voices in every single way. And I truly appreciate you sharing your story and taking action. I watched that 60-minute piece and it was incredible. And I would urge our audience to watch that as well. We can share the link. But thank you so much for taking the time to share your story and for your activism. And we look forward to working with you with Gracie's Foundation. So thanks so much, Bryan.
It was nice talking to you as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Alyssa, we had an amazing conversation. He's just an incredible man.
Well, thank you to you, and thank you to Bryan. In this work, we've all met too many parents who have lost their children, and too many children who have lost their parents to gun violence, and it's infuriating. It's a pandemic that kills tens of thousands of Americans every year. But I think hearing stories like Bryan's and his love for his daughter Gracie gives me hope. So I find hope in people like Bryan, and also in people like our next guest. Senator Richard Blumenthal is the senior United States Senator from Connecticut, where he served since 2011. He has been a constant force for gun violence prevention legislation on the Hill and is currently the sponsor of S 3743, the Untraceable Firearms Act of 2020. Senator Blumenthal, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Alyssa, and thank you for bringing us together in this way, serving as moderator, and for your extraordinary organizational efforts with Ben, who is also on this call. I want to say a particular thanks to two of my Connecticut colleagues, Jeremy Stein, who has really led Connecticut Against Gun Violence with such extraordinary steadfastness and vision and bravery, and to Poe Murray, who I have known since the Newtown tragedy, when she initiated an organization that is accomplishing so much good and has given a way for the families who suffered through the Newtown tragedy to have a voice and an impact on policy in Washington, D.C. And if I say nothing else, after listening to Bryan Muehlberger, I just want to thank all of the victims and survivors who have really been the heroes of this effort. Kristen and Michael Song in Connecticut, who have championed the Safe Storage Act, the Newtown families who came to Washington in the wake of that tragedy, and almost, literally within a couple of votes, accomplished tremendously strengthening the background check bill. And what we have seen is those survivors and victims, and there are others, Fred Gutenberg and all of the folks who have worked on the marches and rallies, they have created a movement. They've created a real social movement. Mm-hmm. We're now in the midst of a pandemic. There is no underestimating the hardship and heartbreak caused by coronavirus. There is no putting out of mind the tragedies that have resulted, the economic crisis, the public health emergency, and now we're in the midst of a racial justice reckoning, which is linked to the ongoing crisis. And violence in America impacts disproportionately our communities of color. But the epidemic of gun violence continues. And we're reminded of it every day because the toll continues. I was back in Connecticut for 2 weeks and talked to parents who lost children very recently. And we need to be mindful of our continuing obligation to act on this gun violence epidemic. And the Untraceable Firearms Act would help immeasurably, but it has to be seen as part of a comprehensive set of measures. This measure would correct the untraceability of firearms made on 3D printers or from kits that can be purchased over the internet. It would require any seller, any manufacturer, any purchaser, any distributor to have serial numbers, to have licensing requirements, to go through background checks. In effect, it would treat these firearms, and they are firearms just like all the other firearms that are sold. And we want to expand background check requirements to include firearms that are sold through unlicensed, federally unlicensed dealers. But in effect, this would correct the untraceability of many of these firearms. Just to be a little bit technical for the moment, it would amend the existing statutory definition of firearm. You heard from Bryan about ATF failing to do that redefinition on its own. That is an egregious lapse of responsibility. But AT&F, unfortunately, has been all too often under the grip of the gun lobby. This would do it by statute. It would also expand the statutory definition of frame or receiver. You heard from Poe about how these frames and receivers can be sold as pieces and parts without being defined as firearms. And it would add a statutory definition for ghost guns. So anybody who's interested, I can get you all the technical details. I want to thank all of my co-sponsors. I'm going to name them, and I want to particularly single out Senator Murphy, who is my partner. We are really colleagues, partners, allies in all of these efforts. We've worked together as a team since Newtown. But in addition to Senator Murphy, Senators Booker, Casey, Feinstein, Gillibrand, Harris, Hirono, Klobuchar, Markey, Menendez, Reed, Schumer, Van Hollen, Warren, and Whitehouse. We need your help. And we can make sure that this measure passes so that no gun is sold without a license, without a serial number, without a background check, just as other guns should be, and that we make sure that we fulfill our responsibility to keep America safe. And I'll just finish on this note. We are seeing a potential explosion of violence due to these ghost guns. Remember, they can be carried on planes, they can be taken into schools because they are undetectable, often because they're made of plastic. They can be used in domestic violence or terrorism, and police have no way of tracing them to an owner because there are no serial numbers. All firearms manufactured in the regular way have serial numbers. Now, they can be removed. It takes an effort to do so, but very often the police can see the remnants of that number even after a crime gun has the serial number removed. But police should be very strongly in favor of this measure. We have a strong set of senators who are in our corner on it, and I'm hoping that it will be an issue in this election. Words have a power here. Your words will have a power to candidates, and I'm very much hoping we can raise the profile on this issue and make sure that we stop this new horror. You know, horror movies have ghosts often. This ghost is real. This ghost creates guns that are every bit as powerful, dangerous, deadly as any other weapon. And they are often weapons of war, manufactured in a different way. Technology has created a new dimension of danger. And I'm very much hoping that we can make ghost guns an issue in the Congress, just as states have done it. I'm proud to say Connecticut has again led the nation with great leadership from Poe and Jeremy and others in Connecticut, and some very energetic and courageous state legislators. So I'm really hoping that we will have broad-based national support on both sides of the aisle.
And Senator, what can everybody watching at home do to help you get this accomplished?
Great question, Alyssa. You can put the question to candidates this November. I'm going to be very blunt. I'm not going to be partisan, but I'm going to be blunt. Put the question to candidates, put gun violence on the ballot. It was on the ballot in 2018, the last time Congress people were elected. It was on the ballot, and gun violence prevention won, because the members of Congress, the candidates who made it an issue, many of them won on it. They didn't just respond to questions, they made it an issue. We need the same kind of political engagement again on this issue. When it's a congressional candidate or a senatorial candidate, make sure that question is asked and make sure that the positions are known, and don't settle for equivocation, ambiguity. Ask for straight answers. And if you can't do it, have others do it. In fact, all the better to have the question repeated again and again and again. Put gun violence on the ballot. Gun violence prevention should be an election issue. I know it's hard because people rightfully and understandably are focused on COVID-19, about the economic tragedies that have occurred with people struggling to put food on the table, businesses working to keep their doors open, people who have lost loved ones. I've lost a friend whose children grew up playing with mine. We've all been touched by this tragedy, but we need to also keep gun violence as an issue in this election. And all of you, through petitions, through questions to candidates, through voting, can make a big difference.
And I also think that this is interconnected because gun sales have gone up since COVID-19 and gun violence is also rising. So these are all issues that are connected, as I believe everything in our country is, and it all comes down to safety, health, liberty.
You're absolutely right.
The pursuit of happiness.
This point is very, very important. Domestic violence is increasing. Women are 5 times more likely to be killed as a result of domestic violence if there is a gun in the house. The reason why domestic violence is increasing is the stress and anxiety of being at home and the potential for abuse and harassment escalating into violence is all the more present. What we're seeing is increasing numbers of gun killings. There were a number in Connecticut over these recent 4 or 5 days, most prominently in New Haven and a number of other big cities. But as we know, gun violence affects every part of our state, every part of our country. Nobody is immune. And I think your point is very well taken. It is interconnected with everything else. It's interconnected with racial justice, because all too often the victims of gun violence are people of color, and communities of color are particularly susceptible.
Well, thank you for all your incredible work, Senator. And as always, all of us on this panel are here to help you. And I just appreciate you so much. So thank you. I hope you'll stay for our Q&A. We've got some good questions that I'm looking at right now. And I also see Fred Gutenberg is here in our audience, and he would love to make a comment on this issue of ghost guns. Poe, how do we do that? Do you know? Do I just press answer live and it'll go to Fred? Let's try it. Fred?
Hang on, I think I've got Fred here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did I get Fred?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, how are you?
Hi, Fred. Thank you for joining us.
Well,
Fred, I just gave you a shout out.
I heard you, and thank you, Senator. To those who are listening, I need to just tell everybody you are a hero to me. The work you have done to keep people safe in Connecticut and across this country is something that I just feel deeply in my heart. I thank you. I appreciate you. I really first got to know you on this issue when I was in DC with my friends, Alyssa and Ben and Poe, and we were running around Washington, DC, trying to shake everybody on the issue of ghost guns. And that was about 2 years ago. And fortunately, state attorney generals across this country have been taking this issue up because of the failed leadership on the other side of your town. But you brought up the election. And I can't overstate how important this election is. We are where we are today because this current administration has unleashed this issue on America with some rules changes and things that they have done. What that means to Americans is you go into an airport, someone may have a gun and you won't know it. Go into the Senate building where you work, where it's secure, and you go through metal detectors, or a sporting event where you go through metal detectors. You may be around someone who has a gun and got through the metal detectors, and you may not know it. And this was a very purposeful decision by this administration. So you brought up the election. I can be partisan. I know you can't. And anyone listening to this, and to anyone you know who isn't listening to this, get the hell out and vote. Get your friends to vote, and get them to vote for Joe Biden and every Democratic senator and every Democratic House member that you can. There is one, listen, this issue of gun violence is not a partisan issue. Bullets don't know if you're a Democrat or a Republican, but the response is horribly partisan. And so I am going to be partisan. We have to flip everything. And we have the chance in this election. If we succeed in this election, these issues get solved. If we don't succeed, not only do these issues not get solved, we will lose the chance to solve them, potentially for generations to come. So please, everybody, listen to Senator Blumenthal. Listen to everybody else on this call. For people like Bryan, who you heard from earlier, or for people like me, it's too late. We already lost what we love most. But we can fix this. We can do this. And it's just over 100 days away. So yes, I can be partisan. Flip it all. Get out there and vote. That's it, guys.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. And now I'm going to go to our panelist who Fred knows very well, Ben Jackson. Ben and I co-founded NoRA in 2018, the day after the Parkland shooting, with the idea of going straight at the NRA. Hi, Ben.
Hi. So I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, we're happy to have you and your expertise. So NoRA worked closely with Fred Blumenberg and the Newtown Action Alliance to stop the Trump administration from allowing the distribution of 3D printed guns. Can you just give us, an overview or an update on where that stands now?
Sure. So very briefly, some of the background on it. There's a company called Defense Distributed that makes plans, designs that can be distributed via the internet for 3D printers to make 3D printed guns. These guns could be plastic, they could be metal, depending on the printer, but they are designed specifically to be untraceable, unregisterable, unknown ghost guns. They were prohibited by the Obama administration, by the State Department, from distributing these guns because, believe it or not, they were regulated under international distribution of arms. The Trump administration then, in response to a lawsuit from Defense Distributed, settled and said, go ahead, you can go ahead and do it. And that's where this became an issue. That as of August of 2018, it looked like these unregulated guns were going to be able to be available to anybody who had a computer and a printer. And we thought that wasn't such a great idea. And so with Newtown Action Alliance, with Fred, who I'm so glad is here to be part of this, we started putting together a coalition of attorneys general across the nation, as well as legislators in Washington, to try and solve this in two different ways, one through the courts and one through the Congress. 21 attorneys general, led by Bob Ferguson in Washington, took up this case to sue the Trump State Department and force them to continue to regulate the distribution of these guns. Long story short, we won that suit. And so the Trump administration decided they were going to move earlier this year, or late last year, the regulation of these guns from the State Department to the Commerce Department, where they get a little bit of a cozier massage. And new regulations basically would have allowed the distribution of these guns again. There were huge loopholes in the law. So again, earlier this year, 20 attorneys general sued to prevent the distribution of these guns. That is where we stand right now. That is still going through the courts. The original court order stands, but the administration sort of manipulated how that's enforced. So if there's an injunction against the State Department, they're like, it's going to Commerce now, so the injunction may not apply there. So that's where the lawsuit stands at present. It works in conjunction with the legislation that Senator Blumenthal and Congressman Cicilline and others are trying to put through Congress. But it's such an important way to defend against a Senate that isn't functioning right now, and to defend against an executive and Senate that are working in tandem in the pocket of the gun industry. And that's sort of where we stand. Alyssa, you're on mute.
It always happens at least once every Zoom. Let me ask you this: while federal legislation is pending, what can be done outside of Congress to stop 3D printed guns and ghost guns?
Sure. So this sort of goes back to what Fred and what Senator Blumenthal were talking about, is that all of these fights that we're having in trying to keep people safe, they're the same fight. And when we look at right now a federal government that is struggling to do the right thing much of the time, the state government and state attorneys general are such an important safety net against organizations like the Trump administration, like the McConnell Senate, where we can have protection from federal laws and this federal government in these areas. So like the coalition that won the defense distributed suit and is continuing to sue, like New York Attorney General Letitia James, who just ordered cease and desist orders this week to a number of companies, who will now 17 companies are going to stop selling ghost guns in New York because of her actions this week. Like state legislatures, there are 5 state legislatures right now that already ban ghost guns. There are a number of others that are considering them. Here in Massachusetts, our Attorney General Maura Healey has been fight after fight after fight on the right side of things. And having that working state government can protect the entire nation, not just that state, but the entire nation from a federal government run amok. And that's such an important part of what the founders did intend as they were putting together our nation, that the states could protect themselves from tyranny. And often I feel like this is what gun violence is. This is a tyranny of gun violence that is sort of imposed on us, and state legislatures and state attorneys general can protect us from that.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here, Ben. I hope you'll stick around. We have some great questions from our audience. And so now we are on to our final panelist for the evening, and that is Jeremy Stein. Jeremy is the Executive Director of Connecticut Against Gun Violence. In his role, he successfully led a charge to outlaw ghost guns in his state. Jeremy, tell us about how you were able to make this happen, and just why it was so important for your state to ban ghost guns.
So I think that the painful truth is what we've heard a couple of times on this panel, which is really the only way to pass sensible gun legislation right now is at the state level. And we really applaud Newtown Action Alliance and NORA and Alyssa, you've been amazing, Fred as well, on trying to get Congress to pass. And we can't ask for better legislators in Congress than our 2 senators, Senator Blumenthal and Senator Murphy. But the painful truth is that until we have control of both of the chambers and the presidency, and we have a Congress that wants to pass and a president that wants to pass common sense gun laws, we have to go state by state. And so really there are three reasons why it has to be a state issue right now. And the first is control of Congress and the houses. The second would be, even if Congress were to pass a law, there is no guarantee that would not be repealed in another administration, or that there wouldn't be some type of sunset clause in the legislation, just like there was with an assault weapons ban. So just like with the assault weapons ban, which was passed in 1994, that sunsetted it in 2004, and Congress has not been able to pass another assault weapons ban. Luckily in Connecticut, we were able to pass that in 1993. So that is another issue why the state should take this up. We should not wait for Congress to act. And the reality is that this is here in our states. We have seen, as Senator Blumenthal has said, we've seen an increase in ghost guns. There was a recent report from California that stated that 30% of all of the guns that they're recovering in crimes were ghost guns. That's 30% of guns that are being either manufactured without serial numbers, or they're being made with 3D printers, completely untraceable, low receivers, or guns that are made out of plastic that are undetectable through metal detectors. And like Fred said, these are guns that could be brought through security in airports, in Congress, in the Senate, in our state assemblies without anyone knowing. So if we are going to do this, if we were going to legislate right now, it has to be done state by state. And the way that we did it was with a lot of the people that are on this call right now. It's through grassroots advocacy of getting people to come to the Capitol to demand a change, of electing really good legislators like we have in Connecticut, great attorney generals like William Tong, who are going to be, forward, true champions on this issue. And that comes down to November, which is, if we are going to make a change in this country in November, we have to vote like our lives depend on it, because the reality is that they do.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you, Jeremy. We have some great questions. So let's just get right to it. And are we throwing to the users to ask these questions, or should I be asking them? Anyone on our panel know the answer to that?
You can ask the questions, Alyssa.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Okay, great. So Chuck Redmond has a great question, maybe for Senator. Do ghost guns use standard ammunition like regular guns? Is there a logistical or legislative way to prevent ghost gun owners from getting ammunition?
Well, so one of the things that we've done in Connecticut is you cannot buy ammunition unless you have a permit or you have an ammunition certificate. So that is another way that states can regulate firearms, is to regulate the ammunition itself. But because it is just so easy to get ammunition, someone could go across state lines and just drive into New Jersey or into Vermont or Maine and get ammunition fairly easily. So, that is why, like, organizations like ourselves, like Connecticut Against Gun Violence, we are focused on state level advocacy, but it is really important that we have, federal legislation on this issue as well, so that we are all operating on the same premises of regulating firearms.
Let me put in a plug, if I may, Alyssa, for a bill that Fred Gutenberg is championing, and I've introduced it in the Congress, which would provide for background checks. It's called Jamie's Law on ammunition purchases, and Fred has been tireless and relentless in working for this legislation. Jeremy's absolutely right that Connecticut has done some good work. I just want to stress for everybody on this call, I've said it so many times, I can repeat it in my sleep. States like Connecticut, with the strongest gun laws in the country, are still at the mercy of states with the weakest. Why? Because guns really have no respect for state boundaries. They are brought across our state boundaries by criminals, by domestic abusers. They're bought across state lines. One of the most horrendous killings in Connecticut occurred when an estranged husband went to a southern state, bought a firearm, returned and killed his wife and gravely injured his mother-in-law. So the real life fact here is that we will never be truly safe or even safer measurably unless we adopt national standards, which just comes back to the point we need to make this election count. And as Jeremy said so well, vote as if our lives depended on it, because they do.
Thank you, Senator. Gary Davis asks, isn't there a simpler solution to this? Couldn't any 3D printer in private hands be programmed to reject firearms designs or templates?
We've actually seen that happen a little bit, but the problem is that there's nobody making that happen, right? That industry needs to be brought along to do this, and that hasn't happened so yet. We actually have made some outreach to 3D printer manufacturers without a lot of success, although it is possible, it is doable. But we also have to remember that 3D printed guns are just a subset of the ghost gun problem, so that even when we do win on this particular issue, we'll still have the larger issue of ghost guns existing in the United States. And so, yes, that is working with businesses, working with technology is an important part of this problem, but it solves one small part of the problem. And as we all know, as soon as there's a technological solution, there are going to be people working to circumvent that technological solution. And having enforcement mechanisms beyond that, I think, is a really, really critical piece of it.
Hey, Gary, I'm so glad you've joined us tonight. But I sit on the board of Guns Down for America, and through that organization, we had a petition going asking 3D manufacturers to prohibit printing of these guns. So I can share the link to that petition.
Yeah, and we work very closely with Guns Down. When I think last year we actually had a conversation with the people from MakerBot, and while they understood the importance of shutting down these types of prints, they also thought it was very difficult because they are in the process of trying to encourage people's creativity to make 3D items. And so they didn't know exactly how they could regulate this while allowing freedom for people to be able to build whatever they wanted on 3D printing. But we have been, as other people have been, in contact with other manufacturers of 3D printers to try to get this done.
Thank you. Here's a question from Donald Lococo. I'm sorry if I pronounced that last name incorrectly, but he asks, under the Untraceable Firearms Act of 2020, would the act shut down the 80% firearms websites and social media sites? Will it be effective because it requires a registered firearms dealer to run and put their registration number on the receiver? Will it be affected because it makes it illegal to sell the registered firearm across state lines?
There are a number of questions, as I assume that's put to me because I'm the lead sponsor of the bill. In effect, it would shut down sites that sell ghost guns. It might not prevent speech about the ghost guns because people have a First Amendment right to discuss them, as we are doing right now by emphasizing their dangers and deadly potential effects. But it would, in effect, shut down all the sales of ghost guns, and there would be no way or reason to have those sites selling them. It would require serialization, licensing, background checks of any guns sold. And so the online kits, as well as the 3D printers, would be stopped.
Well, thank you to all of our panelists and to everyone that joined us this evening. I hope you understand what a major issue this is. And I'd just like to thank Poe Murray and the Newtown Action Alliance for hosting this amazing event, and also to the panelists, both for being here and also for your dedication to this important cause. And to each of you watching, now is the time to fight harder than ever. Register to vote, make sure your friends are registered to vote, and keep making sure you're registered to vote. I was actually purged from my voting roles in my area, so make sure you check up on your voter registration. Talk to your friends about how really, really important this is. And, thank you so much. Follow all of our incredible panelists on social media so you can learn more information on how you can help to make our country safer and to get rid of this horrible idea of ghost guns. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa.